I didn't cry. Not when I found the first statement. Not when I saw the transfer date. Not even when my stepmother sat across from me at the notary's office and smiled like she hadn't just tried to hollow me out. I just made a list. That's how I've always worked. My mother used to say I came out of the womb with a plan. I don't know if that's a compliment, but it saved me. So here's what happened, all of it. Because I think a lot of people need to hear that staying quiet doesn't mean staying still. My name is Vivian. I'm 31. I am a registered nurse working out of a hospital in Mississauga, Ontario, and for the past 4 years I've been doing 12-hour overnight shifts 3 or 4 times a week. That kind of schedule does something to you. You stop spending money because you're too tired to go anywhere. You cook at home because takeout feels like too many decisions after a night like that. You save, almost by accident, because there's just no time to spend. By the time I was 29, I had $74,000 sitting in a TFSA and a FHSA combined. That was mine. Shifts on Christmas. Shifts on years. Picking up overtime when a colleague called in sick. Every dollar traceable to a specific night I didn't sleep. My father remarried when I was 23. Her name is Colette. I want to be fair about this part because I think it matters. I didn't dislike her at first. She was polished in the way some women are, the kind of polish that comes from watching how a room works and adjusting accordingly. She laughed at my father's jokes. She remembered small things I'd mentioned once, months earlier. She brought nice wine to dinners. I thought, okay, he's happy. That's enough. What I didn't see, what I was too busy working to see, was the infrastructure she was building. My father has always been what I'd call conflict-averse, to the point of paralysis. He's a good man in many ways. He shows up. He remembers birthdays. But when a room gets tense, he goes quiet in that particular way where his whole face smooths out and he stares at something slightly off to the side, like he's reading from a teleprompter only he can see. Colette understood this about him faster than I ever did, and she used it. The first sign I missed was the phone call in the spring of the year before everything happened. She called me, not him, to talk about my father's retirement. He was 62 and thinking about stepping back from the machining company he'd co-owned for 20 years. She said they were looking at their options. She asked, conversationally, whether I'd thought about property, whether I'd considered that real estate in the GTA was only going one direction, whether I'd spoken to a financial advisor. I said I had my own plan, thanks. She said, of course you do. That was the whole call, 3 minutes. I remember it now as the opening move. The second sign, which I also missed, my father mentioning over dinner the following autumn that Colette had been organizing the family finances. When I asked what that meant, he said something vague about consolidating accounts, getting everything into one place for simplicity. I asked if that included my accounts. He said no, obviously not. And then he looked slightly to the left of my face and changed the subject to hockey. I should have pushed. I didn't. I was 3 days out from a brutal stretch of night shifts, and I didn't have the bandwidth for what I sensed might be a long conversation. What Colette had actually done, what I would learn much later in pieces, was this: at some point she had gotten hold of enough of my personal information to make an inquiry. A high-ratio lender had run a soft credit check on me. I didn't catch it the first time I looked at my credit report because I wasn't looking carefully. I was checking my score, not parsing every line. But it was there. A single inquiry from a mortgage company I'd never heard of, time-stamped 8 months before my life fell sideways. The way she got my SIN, my social insurance number, I believe came through my father, not necessarily with his full understanding of what she was using it for, but it came from somewhere inside that house, and there are only 2 people who live in that house. Here's what I came to understand about Colette over time. She was not reckless. She was methodical. She didn't grab. She arranged. She had spent months, possibly over a year, mapping out what I had, how it was held, and what would need to happen for her to access it. And she had been very, very patient. The house she and my father were buying was in Oakville, a detached home on a quiet street, the kind of street where every lawn looks like it gets its edges done by someone who cares deeply about edges. The asking price was just over $1.1 million. My father had some equity from his previous property, but the numbers didn't fully close. There was a gap. I found out about this gap the same way I found out about most of it after the fact. What I found first was an alert from my bank. I had set up notifications for any account activity, just the thing I'd done after a colleague had her account compromised 2 years earlier. The alert came on a Tuesday morning while I was getting ready to leave for a night shift. It said a $40,000 transfer had been initiated from my FHSA. I stood in my kitchen in my scrubs and read it 3 times. I called the bank's fraud line while putting on my shoes. I was on hold for 11 minutes. When I got through, the representative confirmed that a transfer request had been submitted through the online portal, authenticated with my credentials, and was currently pending clearance. I said, I did not do this. She flagged it, froze the account, and escalated it. They reversed the transfer before it fully processed. But here's what I needed to understand. How did someone log into my account? I went through everything, changed every password, checked my email for any phishing attempts. Then I logged into the bank's security portal and looked at the access log. There was an IP address that wasn't mine. I wrote it down. I didn't know what to do with it yet, but I wrote it down. I didn't know what to do with it yet, but I wrote it down. I did not call my father that night. I want to be clear about that decision because it matters. I thought about it for the whole drive to work. I thought about it through my shift, between vitals, between charting, between the small moments of quiet that a hospital floor allows. And what I kept coming back to was this. If I called my father, one of 2 things would happen. Either he knew nothing, and the call would alarm him and alert Colette before I had any real ground under my feet. Or he knew something, and the call would do the same thing in a worse way. So I said nothing, and I started building a file. I went back and pulled every financial document I could access. I requested a full credit report, not a summary, the actual full report, and I read every line. That's when I found the second inquiry. Same lender, different date. They had tried twice. I printed everything. Then I called the mortgage company. Not to confront anyone, I was very careful about this, but just to ask very neutrally about the nature of an inquiry on my file. The representative I spoke with was helpful in the way that people are when they don't know they're being helpful. She confirmed that an application had been submitted listing me as a co-borrower and referencing a gift letter, a letter supposedly from me, confirming I was voluntarily contributing $40,000 to the purchase, a gift letter. I asked her to email me everything associated with that application. She hesitated. I said I was calling to dispute the application and would be filing a report with my provincial regulator. She emailed it within 20 minutes. The gift letter had my name on it, my address, my SIN. It was signed, or rather something that looked like my signature had been placed at the bottom. I knew immediately it wasn't mine. The shape of how I sign my name is specific enough that I could tell in about 3 seconds. But more importantly, I had never written or authorized any such letter. This was a forged document, a fraudulent co-borrower application. And depending on what the lender had actually done with it, possibly wire fraud under federal law. I did not call Colette. I called a lawyer. She was a real estate and fraud attorney in Brampton whose name a colleague had mentioned once in passing. Apparently, she'd helped someone untangle a nightmare title dispute. I got an appointment within the week. I brought everything, the credit report, the access log with the IP address, the email from the lender with the application and the forged gift letter, screenshots of my account transfer alert. My lawyer looked at all of it for a long time without saying anything. Then she said, "This is significant." We put together a strategy over the next 3 weeks. I want to explain what that strategy was, because this is the part I think people need to hear most. I did not go to my father. I did not confront Colette. I did not confront Colette. I did not post anything, tell any family members, or drop any hints. I showed up to a Sunday dinner in late October and ate chicken and watched Colette pour more wine and tell a story about a couple they'd met at an open house, and I nodded and passed the salad and said everything was fine at work. Because if she didn't know I knew, she would keep moving forward. And if she kept moving forward, she would sign things. The closing date on the Oakville house was set for the second Friday of November. My lawyer had, by that point, been in contact with the lender's legal department. She had also filed a report with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre and looped in local police, who in turn contacted the RCMP's Financial Crime Division. Given the potential federal dimension, the use of fraudulent documents to obtain mortgage financing is not a provincial matter when it crosses certain thresholds. The forged gift letter, the fraudulent co-borrower application, the unauthorized use of my SIN. These were serious instruments. The plan was to let the closing proceed until the moment Colette was asked to certify under oath that all documents submitted in connection with the application were accurate and truthful. That moment came at 10:17 in the morning on a Friday in November in a notary's office on a commercial strip in Mississauga. I know the time because I looked at my phone right before I walked in. My father was there. Colette was there. The notary was there. And I was there as, officially, the co-borrower whose signature and contribution were referenced throughout the application. Nobody had told them I'd been invited to the signing. I had requested through my lawyer to be present. The notary, who by that point had been made aware that a fraud investigation was underway and that law enforcement had been notified, agreed. When I walked in, my father's face did something I'd never seen it do before. The smoothing out thing didn't happen. He looked at me and then at Colette, and then back at me, and something moved through his expression that I can only describe as the specific fear of a man who has spent a long time not asking questions and is now about to find out what the answers were. Colette was composed. I'll give her that. She said my name, warmly, like she was pleased to see me. She said she hadn't known I was coming. I said I wouldn't have missed it. The notary asked everyone to be seated. What happened next took about 40 minutes, and I am going to describe it as carefully as I can, because every detail matters. The notary went through the documentation. When he reached the section covering the co-borrower contribution, my supposed $40,000 gift, he asked Colette to confirm for the record that all documentation associated with the application had been prepared truthfully and with the knowledge and consent of all named parties. She said yes. The notary made a note. Then he slid a form across the table. He said this was the statutory declaration confirming same and that signing it constituted a sworn statement. She signed it. I watched her sign it. The notary looked at me. I nodded. He then placed on the table the report from my lawyer, the IP access log, the credit report showing unauthorized inquiries, the original gift letter alongside my actual known signatures, and a letter from the lender's legal department confirming the documents had been submitted without my authorization. My father said, "What is this?" Not to me, he said it to the room. To no one in particular. Colette looked at the papers. She looked at me. And for the first time in 2 years of Sunday dinners and polite phone calls and past salad bowls, she had nothing to say. The RCMP officer who had been waiting in the parking lot came in when the notary made the call. The closing did not proceed. Colette was taken in for questioning that afternoon. The file was referred for prosecution. She was later charged with identity fraud, forgery, and fraud over $5,000 under the Criminal Code of Canada. The lender filed a separate civil complaint. The process took 14 months from that Friday in November to a plea and sentencing. She received a conditional sentence of 2 years less a day to be served in the community, along with 3 years of probation and in order to make full restitution. She is not allowed to apply for credit in my name or my father's name. She is not allowed to contact me. My father did not face criminal charges. What he knew and when he knew it was investigated. The conclusion was that he had been, at minimum, willfully blind. He had signed one document in connection with the application under the belief that it was a standard co-signature without reading it carefully. He was not prosecuted. But he was not absolved either. The line between knowing and choosing not to ask. I've thought about it a lot. I have not resolved how I feel about it. He called me the night after the closing. He cried. He said he hadn't known what she was doing. He said he should have asked. He said he was sorry in the way people are sorry when they're also terrified of what their sorry reveals about them. I told him I needed time. I still need time. There are people who would say I should have warned him before I let it all unfold in that office. Maybe. I've heard it from a few people who know parts of the story. But here is what I know. I warned him with every soft question I asked over 2 years that he deflected. I warned him when I said I had my own plan and he laughed and let her keep talking. Some warnings don't use words. Some warnings are just the absence of a question you were always allowed to ask. The Oakville house was never purchased. My father is still in the home they've been renting. I don't know what his finances look like now. That's not my information to hold. My $74,000 is intact. The attempted transfer was reversed before it cleared. The FHSA is still mine every cent, and I've added to it since. I'm still saving for a home, still working nights when I can, still making the list. To anyone reading this who has a feeling, that small, specific unease you push down because you don't want to be wrong, because the person is family, because it would be awkward, because you don't have proof yet, I want to say, write down the date. Pull your credit report. Set up the alerts. Don't accuse anyone. Don't say a word. Just start the list. Closure isn't a reconciliation. It isn't a conversation that goes well. It isn't being told you are right. It's a signed statutory declaration on a table in Mississauga on a Friday morning, and a door you walk out of and don't look back through. I paid for that silence. I earned it.